Well, when we take a look at, how harps differ from various manufacturers, certainly materials, design, and build quality and sound would be the things that differentiate them. I would say that one of the largest determinants of how good the instrument is in play is airtightness, because an airtight harp actually has very good resonance on the note and a nice rich sound. And minute control of volume by breath, which means that you can do things like vibrato under complete control, because every breath thing that you do shows up on the harp. Otherwise, a large part of what you do is just lost air. So when we approach airtightness, how do we deal with that? How do we go about thinking about it, and how do we go about fixing it? Well, the first thing we do is we use our mind and we think. And so let's just kind of take this harp apart and we'll kind of think together about how to consider airtightness on an instrument. Well, it's a given that air loss is always going to happen between the mating or juncture or contact point of two different parts. Okay? Now, in my experience, none of the harps leak from the reed plate to the comb. They're uniformly airtight from my experience. So there may be a few out there, but as a general rule, it's not going to be the fit of the reed plate to the comb. Although if you over-tighten the screws, you can actually bend the reed plate a little bit, but that'll create other problems. So what we have, if we take a look at how this harp is constructed, is we have the comb top, and then there is an interface between that and the underside of the flat blank. Okay? So that's two parts right there that touch. And any place that two parts touch can be a source of air leak. So if you look at the machining on this, it's quite precise, but the tops of the combs, not so much. So by stripping the comb of everything and sanding it, as I have in my video, you can make the interface of this to the underside of this very precise. Okay, well, where's the next area then that could be problematic? You have then the slide. Okay, now, if the slide itself is scratched up so bad that it affects its smoothness and its ability to lay on the metal piece, then that interface, the interface of the slide to the upper surface of the flat blank, can be a source of air loss. Rarely. The next source of air loss is the shouldered blank, so called because it has little teeny shoulders on it. See, it's not flat. They come down on both sides a little bit. It's called shouldered blank. Now, you put that piece on, and of course the interface of the shouldered blank, if you look at it closely, actually sets into the lower flat blank with these little tabs, okay? Now, if the distance between the top blank that's shouldered and the low one, which is set, of course, by the depth of that rounded part, if those are wrong, then the space for the slide will be too big and you will have air loss probably between the top and the bottom of the slide, because the tube that's created here by this to this is too big. Now, tightening up the mouthpiece screws won't really deal with it. In that instance, you have to take the shouldered blank and stone down these edges so that it lays more tightly upon the slide. And so that is another area of air loss which does exist on this harp and every other one that was ever done with this type of design. Very common problem. Now, the final area for air loss is the interface of the underside of the mouthpiece to the upper surface of the shouldered blank. Okay, now what can you do about that? Well, this is very precisely machined, but you'll find that the underside of the mouthpiece, not so much. Okay, so you could sand down, as I've shown in my videos, the underside of this mouthpiece. But you know, the interesting thing is that what can be a source of leakage on a chromatic harmonica mouthpiece assembly? The interface between all of the parts. Every interface. Comb to underside of flat blank. Probably the comb won't be totally flat. That's one source of leakage. Then you have the slide, condition of the slide. Then you have the upper surface of the flat blank to the rounded blank on top of that, and how they fit together. It might be too big and have to be brought down tighter to the slide. Okay, so it would be the fit, and I'll show you here again with these parts. It would be the tube which is created for the slide between the flat blank and the shouldered blank. You see, they create a little tube, and in that little tube runs, in that hole, runs the slide. And if that gap, that little line there between the two, is too big, it will leak air because there's space in there. And don't forget, air rushes out any place there's space and holes. Okay? Then your final area of air loss would be the interface between the top of the shouldered blank and the underside of the mouthpiece. So as you think about airtightness on your instrument, say to yourself, any place that those parts interface could potentially be leaking air. And that is the right mental outlook to have as you consider doing something to make your harp more airtight. Now, I will mention to you that when I went to do this customization, it turned out that the one side of the shouldered blank was a different height than the other side, so that all the notes that were blows and draws with the slide out were fine. But on a straight tune, when you push the slide in, of course, they're all going to open up on the bottom. And when I played on the bottom, they weren't airtight. The only solution could have been that the shoulder blank was too high on that side. And when I actually sanded it down with stones, it tightened up on all of the ones with the slide open, or the slide in. So it was kind of kiltered, you know. Again, an interface of two parts that could be problematic. How did I figure that one out? Well, it was on one side only. It was actually the ones on the bottom, not the ones on the top, which are only revealed when the slide goes in. So I knew it had to be something that was only true when the slide was in, and that would be the side where the gap was too big, all along the shouldered blank and the flat blank interface, those two. So it was like this, and it had to be made like that. Okay, so that's how you want to think about airtightness. It can really help you out as you go to figure out what to do. That's how you think about airtightness in a harp.